information, and then they stand up or they say something in that classroom, they're not made fun of, no matter what they believe in.
I'd like to add on to that when we prevent inclusive classrooms, we're also creating an environment that increases negative health outcomes for our LGBTQ kids. We know that they have higher rates of suicide, self-harm, and when we create inclusive classrooms, we validate who they are. And that's really, really important to their mental health. You're in the midst of a mental health epidemic when it comes to either substance abuse or just higher rates of depression amongst our kids. You can look at the same data from the YRBSS to see that we have really high rates of negative mental health outcomes. And that extends into the classroom. So when we provide information that helps kids not only make good decisions, but also validates who they are, it increases their mental health and also prevents things like suicide and self-harm.
My name is Rochelle Greenapp. On August 1st, I had a show on this topic on WMNF, and I was fortunate to have Ashley Capucci as one of my guests. One of the questions that came up on that show I want to reiterate for this audience, there's been a lot of talk about how comfortable parents are about talking about these issues with their kids. One of the things I was astounded to learn from you, Ms. Capucci, on my show, was that this curriculum, whatever it is not necessarily mandated in its full form in every classroom for that age student in the across the Hillsborough County school system. And we have teachers who are more or less comfortable with the material that can make adaptations to this curriculum, leave stuff out, for example, or introduce their own values and morals. And I want to know, has any change been made to that in terms of, is it now mandatory that the curriculum, whatever it is, be taught as is, or can teachers opt out of sections of it across the system?
So currently right now, we don't know what's being taught at Jefferson High School versus Clanton. And so developing and having consistent lessons, we want to make sure that we know what's being taught. So we really encourage our teachers, if they're not comfortable teaching a section, to call either myself, and I work closely with Lauren Woodward in the district, and we'll come in and co-teach with you or teach a lesson for you. So they have that option. We also have for our parents opting out. They can opt out. And so we want to just make sure that we put that message out there. Parents are the first line that can make the decision for the students, but we do have the opt-out policy that is aligned with what the state also is saying.
Hi, my name is Rachel Racken, and in addition to being a parent and a Hillsborough County student, I'm also a board-certified division plan. So I talk about science and I talk about sex all day long. And what the science appears to show us is that in places such as Texas, which has one of the most robust abstinence-only curriculums, it's not working. So they have higher rates of teen pregnancy, they have higher rates of teens having sex than the rest of the country. So in light of that, my question is, are there any organizations that do not believe that we should be teaching comprehensive sex ed? And what is the push, in fact, to not teach comprehensive sex ed? Why wouldn't we want to, as you say, protect our students?
That's a great question. Typically, I think of the organizations that are for it, right? Like the Sexuality Information and Education Council for the United States, Advocates for Youth. We see, a lot of times when we talk about sex education, because there's such a moralistic and sort of, values-centered perspective put on this, sex is taboo, sex is related to religion, sex is related to intimacy, right? People get really up in arms about it. But when you just look at the science, it's very, very clear, just as you said, which is why I think it's important for, schools can provide information, organizations that are focused on this topic can provide information, but it's really the parents that provide the context, right? They're the ones that provide the moral and values-based context for their kids. And I think a lot of the push just really focuses on misinformation, to be honest.
I just wanted to add, if people spent time in classrooms working with young people and teaching sex ed, they would understand why it's so important. And there's many parents in this room, and I understand that as parents, we want our children to be safe. We want them to get educated, and that's what school's all about, is safety and education and a learning space. And so I think sometimes people focus so much on sex, and again, I can't stress enough that sexuality is so much more than sex. It's about relationships, it's about self-esteem, communications, how people feel in their bodies, it's about reproduction. You know, there are so many young people that don't understand what it means to have a period, or that if someone is menstruating, they can carry a pregnancy. So we are failing our children by not giving this information. So if someone can convince me otherwise, I don't understand the pushback, because the science is showing that when young people have information, they are going to make better decisions about their bodies. It's really that simple. That's what the research is showing.
So you asked why we don't have this come and embrace this, and I think it's really all about fear. We're really afraid that if we say something or do something that it will change the course of the future and our kids are going to engage in risky behavior, but the data shows otherwise. And a lot of times fear is unfounded and it's not based on fact. And so we really have to continually move from our feelings and move to reality, and that is based on data and fact. Also, we don't like to have uncomfortable conversations. If I'm really honest, this is the last place on the planet I want to be right now. This is uncomfortable. But uncomfortable conversations are important, and it's often the uncomfortable conversations that are the ones that we need to have, but we have a tendency to avoid.
So, she feels uncomfortable. I think that's funny. No, nothing for you, but I'm a little bit, I guess, behind the curve here too, for versus my position on this. But I want to say a couple of things. First, data, you have to look at where the data comes from before you can believe the data. I've got two national surveys, one from the CDC and one from the Barna Group, that say 60% of students have never had sex. So that means we're catering to the 40% to try. I mean, I don't know exactly why we would do this. Let's encourage those 60% to continue not having sex and do it in a positive way, and also try to help the 40% that are already having sex get out of having sex, and that's something that can be done. 82%, you think that's funny? That's serious. 82% of students who had sexual risk reduction or CSE education said that it was mostly about condoms and not getting pregnant. 38% said when they had CSE they felt they were expected to have sex. 42% of 18, 19-year-olds said that they didn't want to be told they were expected to have sex. That's what comprehensive sex ed does.
Teresa Miller. I do a lot of work in drug prevention, and one of the things we learned is we can help children have the skills and the strategies to say no to drugs. The longer they put off using drugs, the less likelihood there'll be addiction. And it seems to be true today that if we could teach our children reasons why not to have sex, that not only would they not get pregnant, but also they wouldn't have these STDs, which years ago when I was growing up there were 5. Now there's 30, and some of them are not curable. So you guys keep saying data and research. Are you going to put your data and research online where I can get it? Because I couldn't find any yesterday. And what steps, some of the points you're making, and what evidence-based program are you using? Because many of the ones I read from Office of Adolescent Health, none of them worked. So what program have you come? What program are you using?
So we also have looked at several curriculums that state they were evidence-based, but really in order to embed an evidence-based curriculum, you have to teach it from cover to cover. Our sexual health education is only 8 days well 9 days now in high school and 8 days in middle school. So we cannot cover it cover to cover if we thought a curriculum. So what we did was just really align with our policy, use the data to drive instruction, and then really talk about how we're going to meet the needs for all of our students within that curriculum. And what we'll do is we'll use whatever evaluation tools that we can to over time make it that evidence-based. So right now it's evidence-informed, and so we'll collect that. But any evidence-based program, we do have to teach it cover to cover.
So I'm trained in one of those curriculum, which is HIP Teens. And HIP Teens actually had an extremely high effectiveness rating. And it was a brief intervention. It was 4 sessions and then 2 booster sessions. And it was particularly focused on girls. But it had significant reductions. Participants had significant reductions in sexual partners, vaginal intercourse, as well as just overall intercourse. And actually we had a 50% reduction in teen pregnancy. And there was actually findings to show that there was an increase in secondary sexual abstinence. And this is a comprehensive sex ed curriculum. And I would say too, I think, drug abuse is an interesting comparison because, we do want to teach our kids about the dangers of drugs, obviously, but with the same thing around comprehensive sex ed, we also want to understand sort of the key motivators that motivate people to make risky decisions, right? And we need to educate them to look for trigger behaviors and provide skills for them to be able to reduce risk.
I believe Mr. Campbell has your...
Thanks. So, a couple of things. First, some of the STDs can't be stopped by condoms. I mean, that's just a fact. Some of them can't be stopped by condoms. They're just skin-to-skin contact. I heard Advocates for Youth mentioned a number of times. Probably most of the people in this room don't recognize or don't know that Advocates for Youth was scheduled to be introduced in Hillsborough County Schools in August of last year. The reason it wasn't introduced in August of last year is because somebody gave it to me and I looked at it and I took it to the administration and to the school board. And they threw Advocates for Youth out because it was too political, it was too pro-abortion, and it was too pro-promotion of the LGBT lifestyle. So I wouldn't use Advocates for Youth as my authority. And also on that HHS site, I was at a conference not too long ago, and I'm almost certain that the majority of those curricula that are recommended on the HHS site were evaluated by the authors. So I don't trust that the validity of those either.
Thank you.
My name is Carly Kian. As a failed product of abstinence-only education, my question is, I said my name is Carly Kian. I'm a failed product of abstinence-only sex education, and now I am very passionate about education for women in every area of sexual health. So my question is, with abstinence-only education, how are you providing tools in your curriculum to help young women protect themselves from sexual assault, both at home and from their peers?
So I presented a curriculum to Hillsborough County Schools, and it was wall-to-wall. So they could have started with part of it and then added other components as time went on, but it was rejected. Part of the reason because it was wall-to-wall, there was a cost involved. I don't think anything's too expensive for our kids, but there was a cost involved. And also because there were a few of the lessons that weren't approved of. So there were enough lessons in this that people could have used, teachers could have used whatever lessons they wanted and not have to use any of the, quote, objectionable lessons. This curriculum has been used in Weld County, Colorado for 5 years, and they've seen a 23% reduction in teen pregnancy. Now, 23% reduction in teen pregnancy, that's measured. The best that we've heard, I went to the HECAT site, which is the evaluation tool the CDC has, and then I followed it to a video, and in the video, the speaker said the best result we've had is 5.1%. But, in Hillsborough County, that's 220,000 students, so that's a big absolute number. 23% is a lot better than 5.1%.
So we really have designed a curriculum that's free of scare or shame tactics. And so when we looked at curriculums that were out there, some of them did have our students putting tape on multiple people's arms and showing how dirty you were and how you would get an STD if you had multiple sexual partners. again, we are a large district and we do have students who have been raped, molested. And so we wanted to make sure that that student who's sitting in our seat, who may have experienced assault of some sort, does not feel excluded and knows that they're not scarred for life. That this is, that they can have a So with the committee, we really dove into each lesson and wanted to make sure that it was not going to, whatever curriculum we were using, was not going to be a shame tactic or fear-based for our students.
Hopefully, Mr. Pettit.
I'll be quick with this. And I appreciate that, Ashley. But the reality is, every one of the lessons that was offered had more than one lesson that could be used for the same purpose. So there was no need to use the few lessons that you objected to if you wanted to just pull those out and use the alternative lessons. So I just don't see that as a rational or a reasonable argument.
Hi, my name is Michael Isaac. What criteria, if any, do you have for determining which teachers are going to get the opportunity to teach sex education? And I ask that question because earlier this week, the assistant principal in one of the public schools in Pasco County was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison for possession of pornography and having multiple relationships with his students. And in the worst case scenario, he's HIV positive. So the media